So Anthropic. Oh, did you hear that Windows error sound? Did you hear that sneak through?
I did not.
Oh, I think it made it to the stream.
Whoops.
So Anthropic is looking to try and stop jailbreaking. They're trying to, everyone wants to stop jailbreaking if you're making AIs, right? Nobody's like, hey, jailbreak us. But what Anthropic is trying to do specifically is stop universal jailbreaks, which we saw the God mode jailbreak from Pliny. And other things like for a while how you could use ASCII art to just jailbreak in any direction you want. And so what they've done is they've created what I'm calling AI jail guards. They're called classifiers, constitutional classifiers. And
that's because Anthropic is big on their whole quote unquote constitutional AI, which is all around a set of principles that their AI models trying to follow and also safeguard.
That tracks. I did not know that history going into that, but that makes sense for a lot of how they're doing it, because what they've done is rather than relying on static, rule-based filters or human moderation or something that is that narrow, they've created what they call constitutional classifiers that embed ethical and safety considerations directly into the system, is what they say. So the way it works, basically, is they start with a constitution that they've defined, which is a set of rules defining what constitutes harmful versus harmless content. How do you classify something as harmful or harmless? So you have a constitution that aims to do that, and they use an LLM. They prompt an LLM with that constitution to generate a bunch of synthetic data, including examples of both harmful and harmless content based on the rules of the constitution. So that's a way to get more specific in an automated manner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You take the
so it's applying broad categories to the thing that's there and saying, is it kind of infringing within the bounds that we think that this thing is, whatever whatever X is.
Yeah, and by saying it's like prompting ChatGPT, here are the rules of what I think is harmful versus not harmful. Come up with examples for both, and come up with a bajillion examples for both, and then use that to train this small model called the classifier, which is what I'm conceptualizing as a jail guard that sits between you and the LLM. So when you send your prompt, the classifier gets it, reads it first, and is like, does this follow my training in the constitution of what is harmful and what isn't, before it hands it to the proper, already trained other model to get a response. And it also looks at the other model's response as it comes back out. And the important thing is it apparently can act token by token, so it can stop stuff in real time if harm is detected, and it only adds a 23.7% overhead to the inference. So it makes it about a quarter less efficient from a speed standpoint, but still totally feasible for real world use. And they did a bunch of testing, over 3,000 hours of red teaming it. They said, we invited 405 participants, including experienced red teamers, to a bug bounty program through HackerOne, and offered substantial monetary incentives up to $15,000 USD for the discovery of universal jailbreaks. No universal jailbreak was discovered. The system successfully blocked 95% of jailbreak attempts, which is a big improvement over the previous number, which was 14%. And then
I love the $15,000 thing there, and the fact that they trotted that out as a really big reward, because when you look at Anthropic and OpenAI and everybody else that are in these multi-billion-dollar funding rounds, to be able to stop a universal jailbreak for only $15,000, that's nothing. And I got to think that whoever comes up with a universal jailbreak that bypasses all these constitutional rules that are in place, that's worth way more than $15,000 for somebody with a bad bent or that wants to sell that on the black market somewhere. So that 15 probably should have had another 0 in there.
Yeah, I didn't think of that at first. That was the first thing you said to me when we were prepping the show. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a really pathetic baby carrot to dangle in front of such a big prize.
It is, yeah. So I am frustrated with them for having the bounty so low. I really like the effort that they're putting there, but I think with the, we're constantly hearing about the pay scale that people in these companies are on and the fundraising that they're doing and the importance of getting this right from a safety perspective. So why only 15K, guys? Come on. Yeah.
Because it is important. Alignment is the thing that we all talk about having to solve. And the the potential for harm is huge.
Is the company that is at least publicly on this more than anybody else. So I would think that they would put their money where their mouth is on this research. It's very likely that somebody outside of the company is going to be the one that comes up with the universal jailbreak. And incenting that the right way is going to be key in having that person come forward and share that publicly with Anthropic rather than just holding on to that for their own experimentation or for some way to exploit that later on.
Right. And part of this too is like it's still always going to be a cat and mouse game, because if you stop, you can stop all the jailbreaks you know of, and you can make it harder to jailbreak, and then someone will find out a way to jailbreak that system. Like that's the eternal cat and mouse game of security. But the advantage to this sort of architecture of using a filter like this, their classifier system, is that they say it's really easy to update the classifier. So as soon as they learn about new threats, new attack vectors, they can update the Constitution, generate new training data, retrain just the classifier, and then stick it back in front of the model. So it's like a smaller,
and that's the key, right? Because that's way more efficient than trying to retrain the base model that they have to take these multi-million-dollar training runs at that last for weeks or months. If you're just training this little layer that sits on top and is more distilled, then that's key. That is a little. Not going back to DeepSeek again, but when you talk about DeepSeek and the power of that being a distillation, right?
Yeah.
That it is a model that was essentially trained by another model. That's what we're talking about here with this constitutional jail guard, essentially. That's kind of just, wandering around. It understands the larger model, has been trained through constantly prodding that thing, and then provides value, on its own because of that.
And like your analogy from the book FAIK about alignment being the frosting layer of the cake, and when you jailbreak, you're trying to push down through that just to get to the cake.
Right.
This is kind of like someone standing over the cake, slapping your hands away when you come at it with bad candles.
Exactly. Or putting another layer of frosting on top. That's what's kind of what I see it as, is you've got your core large language model, and then you've got your reinforcement learning through human feedback, and then you have this little guard layer that's on top. Maybe that's somebody that did some decorations or something else, and then you've still got your prompt that's trying to break through all that in just the right way.
It just has to smash through the fondant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that fondant gets, is pretty strong on its own. But, I'm wondering if there's varying degrees of this. It's, there's almost a 25% tax on top of it, the way that you talked about it, which slows down a model. So if you're doing billions and billions of, real-time or near real-time transactions, that adds up in time, and it also probably adds up in token cost for somebody's paying for that compute.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a factor. The fact that it adds overhead to the inference call, and it also, as you introduce more alignment, like we've talked about before, you're going to get more refusals for totally banal and fine requests. Because that's the issue. If you overguard something, it can't talk about anything. So it's a fine line to walk. Fortunately, they did say that the classifiers introduced only a 0.38% increase in refusals on real world usage. So that would indicate that unnecessary restrictions are pretty minimal. Yeah. So a new architecture, I guess, although it seems intuitively just like you've abstracted the part of the alignment layer out to being its own little model. And then now it's just a game of jailbreaking that. So we'll see. Yeah.
It's one more filter on top of everything else. So I think it makes sense. I'll be interested to see how effective it is. The jailbreak that I wrote almost a year ago at this point, just to go through and do all the fake kidnapper stuff where I did a whole bunch of social engineering within the jailbreak, that still works against every system that they put out. So
really,
yeah. And I'm not sure if that's the kind of jailbreak they're talking about, right? Because when you talk about a universal jailbreak, it's subtly different than the use case based jailbreak that I'm going for.
I should mention this. I didn't put it into the prep sheet, but I did read it in the paper, which we'll also link. It's really dense, though. As all of these are. They're not fun to read. But they were specifically talking about worries in the biological and chemical things.
Biological, nuclear, radiological. Yeah.
Yeah, CBRN stuff. Yep. So that was particularly what they focused on in the paper.
Yeah.
So not necessarily kidnapping bots, but...
Which is interesting, though, and I know we only have 30 seconds left. If you're interested in the CBRN stuff and the issues that can potentially, I guess we are interested in CBRN issues.
Yeah, the fire department is.
They just decided to come and stop this conversation. No, O3 Mini from OpenAI just came out a few days ago. And their system card mentioned that there were some red team instances that had medium concern around CBRN related stuff, and that it could help somebody with chemical biological weapons creation.
Yikes. Well, I gotta make sure that that's not the police rolling up because they heard us talking about chemical and biological weapon creation. And then we've got a dumpster fire to get to. So stick around.
We do.
We'll be right back.